because it's something that I struggle with, and I believe a lot of people do, is feeling worthy enough to spend money on yourself. I think
Hmm.
a lot of people, and on things outside of like clothes and material things, like
Hmm.
what I would say I've made the least amount of money in the last 4 months, but I've learned the most internally in my heart, in my character, my mindset, in the last 4 months. And that doesn't feel good because to the outside world, that's like you're not succeeding.
Welcome to Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh. On today's episode, we have Juan Pinilla, who is, I met through social media, and we found out somehow our paths crossed way back when. And it's so amazing to have connected with Juan because he is a new entrepreneur. And he has an amazing podcast out there called Kingdom Partnerships Podcast. You have to check it out. It's an amazing podcast and really helps you change your mindset a little bit. And so Juan and I have the same commonality in faith. We're both entrepreneurs. And so I talked with Juan about his insights on so he's fairly new in entrepreneurship, so we take a deep dive into some of the things that he's going through, a little bit about his journey, what led him to wanting to pursue entrepreneurship. We talk about various topics: the power of mentorship, the power of investing in your personal growth, investing in yourself, and also the things that he's going through as he's starting out his new business. So thank you for joining us today on Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh. You're in store for an amazing interview, and let's go into the interview with Juan Pinilla. Well, Juan, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Happy to have you on.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I'm honored and humbled.
Awesome. It was amazing how we were able to connect and not knowing even how our paths crossed in the past, but it's been great to connect and get to know you as well.
Yeah, man. I think a lot of it had to do also with social media.
Yep.
Just goes to show the power of social media is it can sometimes be very positive in connecting people in the right spheres of life.
Yeah, it's been really good. I've really enjoyed your podcast, Kingdom
Thanks, man.
Partnerships, and I've really loved the your message and the heart behind what you're doing today. And it's been great, really learning from your story a little bit, and also your awesome guests that you've brought on. And
Hmm.
what I really wanted to do is really unpack your journey that you're on right now, and you're kind of on the front end, I would say, of
Hmm.
entrepreneurship and just getting your feet wet into that journey. But what before even going into that, what I really wanted to chat on is really your journey a little bit on your career on what led you to entrepreneurship, your journey
Yeah.
before all this. So whatever you would like to share on this, tell us a little bit about your career journey so far that led up to this.
Yeah. So I guess I was kind of like any other kiddo out of high school, college time, following the footsteps of what parents and society kind of say to do. Go to college, get a degree, work the 9 to 5, get the good job, get comfortable. I really enjoyed my dad's career job. He was a diplomat for Colombia here in the United States. Is how we got here when I was little. Um, and I enjoyed the traveling. I enjoyed the perks. It looked really cool. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it's in the realm of like rhetoric where you just talk. I like talking. Let's do that. So I studied that, graduated, went to the United Nations, worked there for a little bit, interned, I should say, and then try to get a job. But something which is the core of who I am that I have to say on here, and I say everything is just my faith and my belief in Jesus Christ.
Mm.
So when I gave my life to him on March of 2016, I was in the middle of just graduating, in the middle of getting that job, and everything changed because it went out of it became a place out of less about me and more about other people. And so I was like, all right, let me influence the sphere of the United Nations and diplomacy by helping people because that's what it's all about, right? That's what the United Nations is there for.
Mhm.
And real quick, my my identity shifted there too because I saw the bureaucracy in the UN, the tied ropes, the caution tape, the money, corruption, whatever you want to call it, if you really dig into that. And I was like, I don't feel like I'm doing a lot of impact here. Won't have a lot of impact here. Um, and so I started a job as a barista, which to not go into the super long tangent, someone saw a light in me and offered me a position on their real estate team in Hoboken, New Jersey, which
Mm.
is prime real estate area. And my mind and my eyes were opened to this real estate industry and to the money that is actually out there in the world. Um, and I just got to see these big entrepreneurs, investors, flippers, all these things, just how they operated, their timelines, all these things. And I was just like, wait, so you made this amount of cash, this like leveraging investments, all of it, which I was completely had no idea of any of these terms, concepts, ideas, just super ignorant, if you will, to all of it because they don't teach you that in high school or college. And it really made me realize I'm like, going to school doesn't really show you a lot about life, a lot about important things in life, I believe. So that's what kind of started my industry, my career in the real estate industry. First started out as a real estate agent, doing sales there. Made my first six figures there. God bless. Then I was presented an opportunity to do solar sales in California, which was extremely easy because the sun's really good out there and the utility companies are robbing people in California. So that was really good too. And then it wasn't until last year around May that I got a word from God where I really felt he told me to start my own thing, start my own company, solopreneur. And it came out of a place out of the parable of the 10 talents in the middle of a worship service at my home church here called Upper Room,
Hmm.
where I really felt the Holy Spirit say, hey, like you're wasting your talents, like the same thing that I just told you about me getting saved and impacting the kingdom, where he's like, you're just comfortable making six figures but you're wasting your talent that I've given you. And you're not doubling it, you're not tripling it, you're not stewarding correctly. You're actually being very unwise with it. Which in hindsight I was. And I was making that an idol, the comfortability, the money, the just the routine of it all, the rat race, if you will.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's start a business, whatever that looks like. So yeah, that's my short version, as short as I can make it. And the common thread amongst it all is that I don't do anything without God really speaking to me or giving me peace. It's not out of my own volition, my own like strength, because I'm not the brightest kid on the block at all. I would just say I'm learning to be a lot more coachable by him, and to the people around me that have gone before me and done it. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see how God can work in your life where you kind of do the typical 9 to 5 and you're like, man, I think there's more.
Hmm.
But what is it? And just leaning into faith
Hmm.
and listening and giving, spending time with God, and then
Yeah.
He sends that word to you in whatever way, and you're like,
Right.
I can do more. I can
Right.
do more than just this.
Hmm.
And what was the that inspiration to even like talk, even thinking about like entrepreneurship and doing something of your own?
Yeah, like I said in May, I heard that word from God,
Hmm.
and one of the biggest themes of last year was fear of man over fear of God. I
Mm.
think a lot of people, if they really wake up and look at themselves in the mirror, we all have fear of something, and you're gonna be a product of your nurture and your surroundings.
Hmm.
And all of my life, like I said, follow this line, like this lane, go here, do this, do that. From school, middle school, high school, college, to parents, to friends, and there's very, very little outliers of that in my life. And if so, they were judged and told they were crazy and told this and that. Um, so I guess to answer your question, the inspiration to doing it all was just truly God, because I think it is easier to just do the 9 to 5. I think it is just comfortable,
Hmm.
but I think people have been, at least in the Western world, about Christianity being easy. It's not. Following Jesus is
Yeah.
not easy. I mean, you look at all those disciples, they left everything behind to follow him. I think that is a little bit of like what entrepreneurship, leave everything, like your nine
Yeah.
to five, your whatever. Not everyone has to do that. I'm not saying you'd have to do that. Some people are built different. My personality is 100% in or 100% out, and I can't do a little bit of both. I'm too stretched, and so you have to leave everything to follow him. And I think entrepreneurship is a lot about faith and growing.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and you make a good point. Entrepreneurship for sure is not for everyone. It seems like the very trendy thing to do right now, I think,
Yeah.
because it's really having that freedom of time, taking back
Mhm.
control of your time. And like for me, I think I'm more wired towards that as well as entrepreneurship is having control and leading something, make an impact. What's the venture that you're pursuing, or what are you kind of putting together at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm currently full-time wholesaling real estate. And so to put it into simple terms, I'm a very visual person.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to find a property, whether it's land, condo, multi, duplex, whatever, single family residential, and get it under contract for a discounted price under market value, because that's the margin that we need for flippers and investors and the wholesaler to make money. I would get that contract and I would assign the rights to that contract over to the real estate investor who's going to come in and rehab it or put tenants in it, whatever they desire to do with it. And
Mm-hmm.
my income would be my profit would be the difference between what I put it under contract for, say 80,000, and what I sold it to the end buyer, which is say 90,000. So that's my job, or that's my investing, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
is finding marketing for properties that are usually distressed and getting them under a contract to give out to other investors.
Awesome, awesome.
Mhm.
And venturing out into entrepreneurship, I feel like it's all with the people that you surround yourself with. That's what really how you're able to be successful is really
Yeah.
having good community. And I can tell by the guests you've had on the podcast, you're on your podcast, you're in surrounded by some great and amazing people.
Yeah. Lucky.
I wanted to really you shit to share is like really what type of coaching or mentoring do you have to help support you as you've been early in on this journey of
Yes.
entrepreneurship?
So the first step I took, which is also a faith step, is investing in yourself, right? Believing that you're worthy of being invested into. I think that's a big lie that people are told as well, is like education should be free and like all this stuff. It's like, no, people should invest in themselves. You look at LeBron, the reason he just hit 40,000 points in 30 something years old is because he probably spends hundreds and millions of dollars on his body, his mental, the team around him, all that stuff. He can't do it on his own. We're not supposed to. So I pulled the trigger and I invested into Wealthy Investor, which is Ryan Pineda is a big real estate mogul out in Las Vegas, Nevada, and also a big social media influencer. And the reason I was attracted to him is because his desire is to also kind of spread the kingdom of God. He's a Christian. Um, so went and learned the fundamentals there, if you will, a lot of basics on intro to real estate, the terms, the team, all these things. I think they give you a good groundwork,
Mm-hmm.
and then through the network of a wealthy investor, I have met one or two guys currently that I'm like constantly basically asking questions every day. I'm like, hey, bro, I got this. What would you do here? What would you do here? And just being like letting go of the pride of like, I'm going to figure this out. Why repeat the mistakes of the people who've gone before you when you could speed the process up of success by learning from the best? So yeah, I got like two guys that are in the local area here in Texas that are doing this 3, 4, 5 years, are making six figures. They again, that's a lot of time that they put into that I could just feed off. And in return, I give them value by either splitting the deal that I'll get or just doing some favors for them, whatever it takes, to be honest. I'm just gravitating towards them, asking questions, following up, and they've taught me a lot.
Yeah, you mentioned something good there is investing in yourself. And I
Mhm.
think that's so critical and essential to to just striving for that next level, even if it's not entrepreneurship. It's like
Yeah.
taking the time to invest in yourself. And because nowadays there's you see these ads on social media, click on my link and in 10 minutes learn how to make six figures in a year or
Right.
whatever, or a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you have to be intentional with investing in yourself because if you don't invest in yourself, you're not going to grow and you're not going to grow in order to be able to build that business or build that venture
Yeah,
or even if you're in let's say a corporate job moving to that next level that you need to be.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I think what I mentioned as well, that it's very important because it's something that I struggle with, and I believe a lot of people do, is feeling worthy enough to spend money on yourself. I think
Hmm.
a lot of people, and on things outside of like clothes and material things, like
Hmm.
what I would say I've made the least amount of money in the last 4 months, but I've learned the most internally in my heart, in my character, my mindset, in the last 4 months. And that doesn't feel good because to the outside world, that's like you're not succeeding. Like, trust me,
Yeah.
I get texts, I get calls from my parents, from my family, and they're like, "So how's it going?" I'm like, "Same as yesterday, man. Hasn't hasn't made me money yet." And they're
Yeah.
like, "Great. You want me to send your resume to somebody?" And I'm like, "No." And like they mean well.
Yeah.
Um, but this kind of value that you get in this season of like the best way I could describe is like a seed planted in the dirt, and like you're in this dark season of growing and it's painful, is the most that you'll benefit, not the dollar bills you'll get at the end of, a year from now, let's say. Although that feels good, it's not the true product, right? So,
Yeah, and I think too, it's a lot of people don't understand behind the scenes of entrepreneurship.
yeah, no, it's not fun.
No, it's not fun. And I think the most challenging was like even I'm 6 to 8 months into it and the self-discipline is so
Hmm.
difficult,
Yeah,
right? Like staying focused because you answer to yourself
yeah,
and what you
exactly.
put in is what you get out.
Yep, yep.
And it's so hard to explain to other people like what you're going through because very few understand that.
Correct. Yeah. I think the best way I could describe it is, and you mentioned even like people on social media click, get rich fast, all this
Mhm.
stuff. People underestimate the struggle and the work and the effort, and just there's so many it's a whole other podcast on it.
Yeah.
Um, that goes into it. I've been an athlete my whole life. I work out a lot, and my buddy was like, "Hey," he said something. He was like, 1% of people run a marathon in America. I was like, that sounds
Mhm.
great. I want to do it. It's super easy. I can do it. Not easy. Not easy at all. Waking up early, running for 3, 4, 5 hours. And then the amount of pain you're in after running that many miles. It sounds little, 26.2 miles, right?
Yeah.
But when you finish it, it's extremely crazy. So I think people underestimate, they see the social media, they see the bank account of the guy who's a millions in dollars, um, and they go, "Oh, I can do it." And so, I don't like to sugarcoat anything. I really am pretty direct, and I'm like, "Look, don't do it if you really don't want to do it because it takes a lot to get into this
Yeah.
space."
Yeah, and making sure that you're surrounded by the right people to help you, whether
Hmm.
it's investing in a mentor or a coach or some type of program. It's
Yeah.
so key to invest in yourself. And even as of late, I've really taken on like learning from books, like from biographies of people. Like
Yeah.
I picked up a book on Elon Musk that came out,
Hmm.
and just like learning, and this is not him himself that he wrote it. It was someone that
Okay.
studied him and was alongside with him and try to unpack his kind of mindset.
Hmm.
And just spending $40 on that book is like you're able to get all the knowledge. Yeah, you
Yeah.
might not be mentored by him, Elon Musk himself, but
Right.
you're able to learn kind of the mindset of a person that is so successful. And just like learning from a book is another way to get that knowledge.
Yeah, 100%. Books are great.
Yeah.
Um, I strictly try to read as much as I can. To be honest, though, my time is consumed in the Bible. Just being
Yeah.
completely honest, and I believe a lot of I mean, it's just true. Whether they realize it or not, but most
Hmm.
people do realize it. All the principles that are in the Bible are applicable to your day-to-day life.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you do that, you're gonna succeed. So most of my reading is the Bible, all the books in there, and then there's a couple of books that I'm trying to read. One of my favorite ones that I've read this season was How to Win Friends and Influence People by
Mm.
Dale Carnegie.
Hmm.
And he speaks about reading autobiographies and biographies of the greats like Abraham Lincoln and generals in war, and he's learned so much from them. So many real life applications that are great. So yeah, I would recommend anybody who's trying to pursue anything in life to read books.
Hmm. Awesome. So what would you say were some of the biggest challenges that you faced early on when starting out in your venture?
Um, for me personally, I don't think this will apply to everybody listening. was fully stepping out of my previous job and going full into this.
Mm,
Now, again, I'm pretty new. I'm not an expert, so by no means do I have the I don't know, the expertise in this, the PhD, but for me and me alone, I can't do something 50-50.
yeah.
And because of that, it just prolonged the process of success and learning this niche or this industry of entrepreneurship, and specifically wholesaling, for me longer. And in hindsight, I wish I would have just pulled the trigger and exited out as soon as I can and gone full into this. Now, again, some other people I've heard are do both. They keep their W-2 because there's some great W-2s out there that you're putting in honestly like 10 hours of work and getting paid a good amount. Like
Yeah.
that's what they say. And so they have the space, but the job that I was in was not 10 hours of work a week. It just wasn't
Mm,
that. And so for me, that was my biggest struggle, was letting go of that, detaching, and then fully diving in because of fear. Again, back to that was the number one thing, like the paycheck, where's it going to come from?
yeah.
And being held captive to that. So that was my biggest, and then my current biggest struggle, um, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, is having that mindset that I mentioned earlier of like, I've grown a lot and I'm grateful, but the real stuff is still there.
Mm,
Um, and I heard a message yesterday by Peter Lewis, Peter K. Lewis. I recommend some of his books too. He's a really great preacher here in Dallas, Texas. And he said a lot of Christians, if you can ask yourself the question, am I truly satisfied? And not answer with a yes, like, am I truly satisfied with the gospel? Am I truly satisfied with Jesus? And if your answer isn't right away yes confidently, then something's in the way of that. And for me, I couldn't answer confidently yes because I had to write in the sentence, I'm truly satisfied when I have X amount of dollars coming in. So that self reflection told me I need to let go of this idol of money that I have and be satisfied whether I have $1,000 in the bank account or $1 billion in the bank account, because I know what truly satisfies me in my
mm,
life. And again, that's just for me, not for everybody listening. So that's the current struggle that I'm in.
I see. Um, let's see. I lost track. One of the most challenging aspects of in even pursuing entrepreneurship or even thinking about it
Hmm.
is continuing to push forward. And I think that's the most challenging because
Hmm.
I have my good days, I have my bad days where,
Yeah.
you feel like, why am I stressing out 12 hours a day? But, putting all this effort into the business and,
Yeah.
um, why isn't no one responding to my emails or phone call? I mean, you have those days, right? Those bad
Right.
days where you're just not motivated to,
Yeah.
like, how do you stay motivated to continue to push forward day in and day out, move the needle, and just continue um, going after it?
I think for anyone chasing entrepreneurship, and for me, I you need to die to yourself, really. You need to do this not for anything out of selfish reasons, in my humble opinion,
Mm,
because then again, you won't ever truly be satisfied. There's always a better thing. There's always more money to be made. You could always compare yourself to the next. So you make it big. There's entrepreneurs out there that have done this 30 years and they're way bigger than you. And then you're not satisfied and you want that. And you lose yourself. In the Bible it says,
yep,
what is it to gain the world and lose your soul? Like, I
yep,
think that's so true. Um, if you do what you want to do out of a place where it's not about you, you actually can impact people and you could
mhm,
actually, like, that is successful. Again, in the Bible, Jesus did it, but like, if you want to read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie, all the examples he gave of all these amazing entrepreneurs back in the day, the Rockefellers, the Abe Lincolns, these leaders, none of what they did ever came out of a place about them. They
sure,
always had another reason. Like, you're not the president for you. You're there to lead the great United States. You're not the leader of a CEO company and all these guys work for you. No, you are there to lead them and make them the most successful they can be. So in turn, you are successful. So I think if you get out of yourself, you die to yourself and all your ambitions, and you actually submit that to growing other people and helping, you are on a track to success. What that looks like is different for everybody.
Yeah, and I think it truly starts with your why. Simon Sinek wrote a good book on that,
Mhm.
is like starting with your why and understanding your why before you get into it, and then uh staying true to it, because I think
Yes.
we all have our North Star, but like staying true to that North Star
Yep.
is so critical to be focused, because in entrepreneurship, if the money starts coming in and your focus goes on to money,
Hmm.
then the reason why you got into it is going to shift.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think to answer again your question, like what motivates me,
Yeah.
I would say there's a couple of things. Again, I want the gospel to be known to people that have never heard it. And I think this sphere of business, a lot of people don't know it and they've maybe lost their way. I would love for young people to see the example of people like you, Cameron, and myself that are truly living out of a place of satisfaction and of full like abundance in Christ, that what they do after that is just a overflow of the relationship that we have with God.
Mm.
Um because again, nothing truly satisfies in this world. It really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um you see these billionaires, these famous people, a lot of them are depressed, on drugs, committing suicide, and even in the Christian world, you have pastors who've done that same thing.
Yeah.
So if you lose your North Star, like you said, if you lose your direction, which is Him and Him alone, um, then everything just doesn't make sense anymore. And I don't want to be that. I think when we say we have those bad days, at least for
Mm-hmm.
me, is when I lose sight of that. When I lose
Yeah.
sight of like my why of, hey, who called me here? Who put me here? Who supplies my needs? Oh, okay, I'm making it about me right now, and I'm sorry. And then you
Yeah.
could. That's the beauty about repentance. You can go back and go, ah, here we go. We're good.
Yeah.
Back on track.
Yeah, that's so true. I know even myself, I realize when I lose track or have those bad days, it's when I have not spent intimacy with
Hmm.
God.
Yeah.
That time with God, and having that truly as a part of my DNA in, like you mentioned, routine,
Hmm.
right? Having times throughout the day where spending time with God, because uh I even was in a meeting earlier this morning, is like whatever you do, whatever the do means for you,
Hmm.
it's gonna be the expression of your relationship with God.
Right. Yeah.
How your relationship is, it's going to come out in your business. It's going to come
Hmm.
out in your other relationships.
Hmm.
It's going to come out in everything that you do. Is how is your relationship with God?
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. He's the creator, and so he created you, so he'll know the best version of you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So Juan, you have a lot going on right now in your personal life. You're
Hmm.
about to get married, and excited for that for you.
Amen. Yeah.
And you do a lot in terms of not only in entrepreneurship, you do a lot. And so how do you balance like your time where you spend on the business, and
Yeah.
then also your personal life? So take us a little bit into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the best expressions that I ever heard when I first got saved and gave my life to Christ was this misconception of balance and prioritization.
Hmm.
A leader in Hillsong, her name was Brenda Thorne. I love her. She was great. She said, I don't balance my life, I prioritize my life. And my number one priority, just so for me, is number one, God. He's everything to me, and he will always be everything to me. So if anything gets in the way of that priority, it has to take step two, which is now going to be my future wife and family. That's my second priority, my family, my core unit. And then my third priority in this season, and I think those two priorities are never going to change and they're never going to be interchangeable. I think those are going to be one and two. I think
Hmm.
the third priority can change in life. Currently, it's this. entrepreneurship, this career that I'm chasing. I'm putting a lot of time and effort and money into it, and so it's my third priority. Um, but there's others like friendships and church or whatever that is, but those can maybe be interchanged a little bit out of the overflow of the first two, in my humble opinion. So I don't balance, because balance, the way she put it, is if that means you're not fully giving 100% to something, you're giving 60-40, 50-50. And we know that, especially with the divorce rate, marriages is not 50-50, it's 100-100. It's
Yeah.
two whole people becoming one. And same goes for your business. If you're giving your business 30% of you, it's not going to be as successful or even survive. So it's just prioritizing, and knowing your capacity. And that's the way I've been doing it. I think another great book that helped my life was John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
That's a good one.
It's a really good book because I have like ADD and I go 100 miles an hour all the time, especially coming from the East Coast, New Jersey, New York, raised my whole life. So that book was so good of just about slowing down, about being present, about eliminating this rush and this lie that we have to work 7 days a week, 60 hours, all these things, which there might be seasons for it, but because I'm a Christian, I honor the Sabbath and I honor a day of rest. If God rested on the seventh day, I'm going to rest a day of the week as well. So there's beauty to it, there's health to it. So I would say those two things: priorities and just realizing that you need rest.
Yeah, I want to dive deeper into this a little bit. Something just came to mind is with everything that we do outside of, let's say, our career or entrepreneurship, what that is, I think it's important for young people to understand this as well, because I've experienced this too, is where, we in our relationships with our friends, with
Hmm.
our families, our spouses or partners, whatever that might be, even though we still prioritize them, we're still distracted because John Mark Comer talks about that a lot.
Yeah.
We are so distracted. Like we might be with our family, we might be with our friends, but
Yeah.
not necessarily there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's real.
What is it that you do to like make sure that you're being intentional with your to be wife, with your
Hmm.
family, with your friends? What is it that you kind of practice to make sure that you are present, but also intentional as well?
That's a great question. I think two things came to mind. Number one is vulnerability. I think as men, if we don't share why we're distracted,
Mm,
um, we'll stay distracted. And so
hmm.
if I could come to the table in the time that I have with my future wife, so let's say dinner time or a date or whatever, and I don't share what I'm struggling with or why I'm distracted,
Yeah.
um, then I'll just stay distracted. Now, that's part one. Part two is finding yourself a partner that will give you grace and love and support in that, and creating a safe place.
Mm,
Because the opposite can happen where you share that and then it's a shame-based relationship and they go, well, you shouldn't feel that way because this is my time.
mm,
And you're ruining it and you're this or whatnot. And then now it's just a toxic cycle. But if you have someone where you can curate that safe space to share that and they go, well, how can I help? And I love you and I'll be praying for you. All that does is, like, I already feel it as I'm talking about it, is just release that distraction and that stress and that burden that that was holding me down during our conversation. Because leaving the office or wherever you're at 6 o'clock after a tough sales call or a
mhm.
rejection, you're carrying that. It doesn't go away 2 minutes later. And some
Yeah.
people are really good at it, some aren't. But talking about it and releasing it and praying and doing that with a family or a wife, for example, can allow, at least allows me to go, great, I was able to just like externally process this and share her with a mat and she's giving me grace. Let me make an effort to be present.
Hmm.
Um, that was the first thing that came to mind. Um, and then the second thing to be more intentional and present is just scheduling times and stuff like that.
Hmm.
You know yourself best. If there's certain days where like this is a day where I'm like gonna be just mentally shot, Or Sunday is a great day. Like I know all day I'm resting. I know I've
Yeah.
submitted that day to absolutely nothing. Do not disturb my phone. Putting the right boundaries and all these things, then commit those times and dates for that. You commit, people call it sabbaticals or long weekends, whatever, to
Mhm.
kind of disconnect from that. So those are the two things that I thought of first: vulnerability, specifically with close family and like a wife or a husband for people.
Mhm.
And then secondly, scheduling intentional time where, yeah, you might take a long weekend and the first day you're still distracted, but you keep waking up and doing things, it'll like your mind will go away from that, hopefully.
Yeah, I really like that vulnerability because I think stepping into entrepreneurship myself is I don't share a lot to others about,
Hmm.
oh, how's it going? Right? You just say it's going good, but how is it really
Yeah.
going?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think I really need to do better at that and sharing that with others rather than because as men, right, we try to like take it in on our own. I
Right.
got this. I got this. It's just me
Hmm.
and God, me and God. But the reality is we need people. We
Yeah.
need people to rally around us and help us
Absolutely.
get to where we want to go.
I agree. And also, like, I would say, because for me, I like to share with everybody, but I've learned in this season of life, don't share with everybody either. Like that,
Yeah.
there was a part I mentioned there about curating a safe space.
Hmm.
Um, and so use wisdom and discernment to be like, this person is a little sketch. I'm not gonna share everything. Yeah. So when they ask me how you doing, I'm like, good.
Yeah.
But if that person that I love, that there's equity there, like a wife, like a best friend, they ask you how I'm doing, I'm like, hey, you got a couple minutes, and I could actually tell you how I'm doing,
Hmm.
and then you can do that. So that's
Yeah,
amazing.
I actually just released an episode talking about voices. How do you deal with the inner voice that tells you you're not good enough? You're not you're choosing the wrong path or you should just go back to your corporate job that you were safe in.
Yeah,
Uh
man,
how do you deal
that's
with that?
that's a really deep and hard question for me personally because one of my biggest issues is that I care about others' opinions of me
Yeah.
sometimes more than I care about what is true of me.
Mm,
And that's something that I'm going through like as a struggle in this day. So for me, something that's been very healing in this season has been listening to what the Father has to say about me, about what God the Father has to say about me, about my Creator, um, because He is my Creator. Like, why would I weigh the opinions of this world over the opinions of the one who created the world and me? And for people, it's called affirmations. For
hmm.
me, it's just spending time with Him and truly hearing and the other thing is not only hearing what he has to say about me, but embracing and receiving that actually, and accepting that because it's so
Mm,
hard to. So whenever I hear that you're not going to make it, you're not enough, I have to go to prayer. I have to go to the Bible. I have to go to worship. I have to read in our where is it? It's over there. Our premarital counseling, there's like truths to speak over your life.
mhm,
um, I have to do that because the enemy would come to steal, kill, and destroy your dream, your identity, your vision, your family, your job. That would be his favorite thing to do. And so he'd even use people close to you, friends, mentors,
mhm.
unfortunately. And so you have to stay strong on what you know is the actual absolute truth of you. And that's where I'm at. It's a really hard topic. I'm not fully like grown out of it. I'm not like
Yeah.
an expert in it. I struggle with it. I think everyone struggles it to a degree. Um, I think another part that I'm growing in is if I do feel hurt by someone's comment or whatever, is not holding on to it, but letting them know.
Yeah.
I wasn't. I thought I was good at confrontation, but then I realized that I would let little comments that actually do like ding me kind of slide off instead of going, hey, like what you said in that moment, I love you. And you probably meant the best. It actually wasn't received well.
Mm,
And that releases against something because then you're not holding on to it, you're letting it go. So
yeah.
that's something else that I've been doing.
Yeah, because something I realize is I struggle with this too, is like you get these external voices, right, that tell you, You're crazy to be going down this journey. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna fail in a year or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're just gonna go back to a corporate job or why are you
and
doing
they
that?
and they think you're like they're like joking, right? Like
Yeah,
I've caught myself doing that to people, and then
yeah.
I've caught myself after the fact going like, "Hey, if what I said like bothered you, let me know."
Mm-hmm.
Because I like we're all culpable of it. We don't mean a lot by it, but we have to be careful with the words we use amongst and speak over people's lives. We
Mm-hmm.
don't know what they're going through or like the heart behind what they're doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah,
agree with you.
that's why I think it's very going back to the people is making sure you have the right people surrounding you that
Yeah.
are gonna help encourage you to move forward into
hmm
whatever season you're into, whether it's moving to the next level in leadership of whatever company you're at, or in this entrepreneurship world that we're talking about, is
Yeah,
to help you really move forward and come alongside with you and be an encouragement to your journey.
for sure, man. 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
There's that cool saying, I rather like three lions or 100 sheep or something like that, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I realized really quick because I'm an extrovert. I get my energy being around people and was always like, or just had many, many friends, if you will, that
hmm
really quickly you truly need to dive deep with just a select few in life to have a good life.
Yeah, I was at a seminar about a month ago with Dr. Sam Chand. He's a friend of John Maxwell,
hmm
and he says if you'll be lucky if you have just a couple of friends.
hmm
You
Yeah,
if you just have a few, you're doing great.
that's awesome. It's really
Yeah,
true, man.
yeah,
Yep. And a lot of people again can have fear in the seasons that they feel lonely.
hmm
In in and this is no shot at. All right, I'll just say will have fear and lower their standards of friendship
mm,
and relationships because they just don't want to be alone. You know, they will compromise on a person's work ethic or their words that they use or what they do on a weekly basis or their ethics and goals just because they want to have someone around that they could have fun with or could like just talk to.
yeah,
Lonely being lonely is not fun. I don't think
yeah,
anyone likes to be lonely, but maybe it's for a reason. And just pray to God that someone would come along with you that is maybe in that same boat or that will grab you by the hand and walk you through that season and be a good mentor, or a father, or a mother.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah. What is something that you wish you would have known now before entering like the entrepreneurship world or journey?
What is something I wish
You would have
stewarding
known.
stewarding my finances better for sure.
Mm,
And letting go. So letting go of like being a slave to money first and foremost, being truly satisfied with God, like I mentioned, and then
hmm
secondly, stewarding finance as well, because starting a business is never, in my opinion, cheap or free. And it's very time consuming. So I don't know the percentages. You can probably look it up, but I'm assuming most businesses don't start profiting in the first quarter. You know, you're probably negative your first quarter, maybe negative your second quarter, right? When you do the P&L of what you put into coaching and this and that and that, and then what you're actually profiting, you're probably
hmm
negative.
Yeah.
So if you could steward your finances well, like if you're leaving that good W-2 job where you were making 150 and you had X amount of savings and you're planning to transition or felt called to, whatever, don't go on that really expensive business trip.
Mm,
Don't go to, go to the casino. Don't do this. Don't say no to certain things and steward what you have in your hand well so that it doesn't cause you any headaches in the future. So that's something that looking back on, I was like, I probably could have said no to a couple things and I probably would feel a little bit more relaxed right now.
Yeah, that's one thing that allowed me to do because once you stop relying on that W-2 paycheck, I would call it, right?
hmm
It was a good exercise for me to go look at all my expenses and all my
hmm
finances. Like, oh my gosh, I was spending on this for like the last, subscriptions that you don't even know
Yeah.
existed.
Yeah.
And it really helps you recalibrate and better,
hmm
like you said, steward your finances. And like I'm able to tithe mo better than I
Yeah.
probably historically used to,
Right.
due
It's
to
good.
subtracting some of the stuff that I was doing. I'm more diligent about expenses in general now.
Hmm.
And I think I've just become better at planning financially, as
Hmm.
I've never been a good steward
Yeah.
of finances having the W-2 because you're always guaranteed that next check.
You just like it's very, again, back to the rat race, very like your
Yeah.
mentality just gets super fixated on like I'm comfortable, I know what's coming in, I know like this is kind of what goes out of my
Hmm.
bank account, and then you look at your bank account, wait, that was a lot more than I expected that goes out.
Yeah.
So like in this season, and I used to laugh and I used to judge all those comments of like, oh, millionaires are so cheap. Like all these millionaires that I know, they're so cheap. They don't even want to spend like $3 on a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I would judge them back when I was like 18, 19, 20, 21. I was like, yeah, dude, if I had $1 million, I wouldn't care. I would give away money. And like more money, more problems, that funny quote,
Hmm.
whatever. Like there's a reason they're stewarding their finances. And good to them. So now I'm trying to be uber aware, paying for a wedding, starting a business, all these things. I'm like, I have a coffee machine at home. I'm not gonna go to a coffee shop. I'm gonna
Yeah.
eat my home coffee because coffee's $5 to $6. I think it's Graham that says he hasn't spent coffee or Starbucks in like years. But yeah, little things like that would amount. You actually have no idea. I would say another thing is living under your means.
Mm.
When you're in that W-2 job, or that constant paycheck in sales, let's say that, has high income, if you will, um, you can live over your means. And so for somebody, you kind of see it on social media sometimes where they go like, oh, they have these fancy Lambos and all these things for NBA stars that get into the league and get the 1 year contract that's like $5 million. Like they go out and they splurge their money. And now put that context into you. So if you're making 150K, I believe now looking at it, my overhead, I don't want to ever spend more than like 25, right? Not even a quarter of my overhead. Previously that wasn't the case. I was like, oh, I'm making 150, let's spend 50%, let's spend 60%.
Yeah.
And then you're realizing you're like, wait, I only have this much left over at the end of the year. That didn't make sense. Like I felt like I made a lot more. It's like you did, but you spent a lot more.
Yeah.
Um, and there's really no need for it, to be honest. So yeah.
Yeah, it's I like what you said about the millionaires being cheap because I worked for a very rich like land developer dude
Hmm.
here in the area, very
Yeah.
influential person, and the cheapest person ever. I remember I got
Yeah.
my car detailed and it was probably like $150.
Yeah.
And I just happened to say it in a conversation in our boardroom, and he was like, "Oh, that's really cheap. I give me the contact for that car detail company." He's like, "I pay like $200." I was like, "What?"
For
But then
$50. Yeah.
I realized like because he's doing that because he's stewarding his finances in a
Yeah.
different way than I probably am
Hmm.
seeing. And I think it's all about mindset too. It has to do with like really aligning your mind
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. No, this season has taught me a lot about, and again, it goes back to what I said about that seed in the ground and growing.
Hmm.
I've learned the most and hopefully can like cement this in my heart and in my brain so that if God allows me to ever become more, have more money, that it's never my God or my master, and that I know now how to steward. I put in the practices that I did when I didn't have money. I think you look at I don't know if you follow School of Hard Knocks, that Instagram profile.
No.
It's this young guy who goes out, he's got a great social media idea, which is he just goes to the richest, most affluent neighborhoods across the United States. So like Bergen County, New Jersey, Highland Park here in Dallas, Texas,
Hmm.
Rodeo Drive in Los Angeles, whatever. And he'll pull up to a Lambo, whatever, of someone who looks very affluential, and will interview them on the spot for like 2 minutes. And one of the main questions he has is, have you ever been broke? And a lot of entrepreneurs, and if you just scroll on his feed, go, absolutely. I was on a couch, I was in my car, I had $10 in my bank account, I had this. They all say they were broke. I think a lesson of being broke is how to steward your money.
Yeah.
I think that's a one big takeaway, because if you don't learn that, like it's gonna mess up the finances when you have a 6 figure, 7 figure, 8 figure portfolio. You're just gonna splurge everywhere, and then a hard economy recession comes in, and you're like, wait, where's all this money?
Hmm.
And it's gone. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad we touched on that because that was so important, especially for young entrepreneurs. You see all this money coming in, you're like, let's go
Hmm.
out and splurge. but like stewarding that is learning how to steward that, and it's different for everyone too.
Hmm.
So learning how to steward in the way that works for you.
And if I could be super practical to a young person, like literally, you probably don't want to hear this. Stay with your parents, live under your means,
Yeah.
live under their insurance. Like if they love you and are taking care of you, use all that. I don't care if you're making 200 grand. Live with
Yep.
your parents for at least a full year before making that step. Just do it. Trust me, it's the
Yeah.
best thing you could ever do.
As long as you can.
As long as you can. Yeah, whatever. Like pray about it, figure it out. But I would say at least a year if you're making
Yeah.
six figures, and especially if you're making six figures so that you're covered.
Hmm. For sure. Where do you see your business in the next 5 years? Like we're in 2024 today. Where do you see yourself in 2029 and 2030, your venture? What's your vision?
That's so funny because the tomorrow I have premarital counseling, and this topic this week is on finances with your loved
Mm.
one.
Hmm.
And one of the questions is like, ask God where you see yourself in 5 years in regards to finances. And so number one I put was absolutely this lesson that we've been talking about is that He's my master and money is never gonna own me or run me or whatever. It's just something that I need to live day to day, but that He's my provider.
Hmm.
Number two, to be completely debt free. Um, you know, loans, whatever it is, just all paid off. And three, that the business is making at least $500,000, practically speaking, on a yearly basis, revenue. So I don't know what net will look like because again, I'm not even a full year into this, but at
Yep.
least $500,000.
Mm. Well, awesome. Well, I'm really glad we had this conversation, and that having some insights from an entrepreneur that's kind of on the front end. Because
Yeah.
we all hear stories of people that have gone through it and are making that 500 or half a million a year
Hmm.
already, but
Right.
it's really nice to kind of hear, and we're still both on the front end of it,
Hmm.
and to kind of share and compare notes
Yeah, man.
and collaborate and also encourage others. It's like you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, one of the things that I'm gonna start this week again because I have my podcast that you said, but I've taken a little break with everything that's been going on for the last month or two.
Yeah.
Is to make it a shorter, intimate version of like being extremely authentic. I've been realizing myself in the space of Instagram and social media that I don't really feel authenticity out there. I
Hmm.
feel the get rich quick, the this and that, the clickbait stuff. And practically speaking, that might not be what gets me the most views, the most whatever. But I believe like if it can influence one person to be like, okay, I've been fearing this, I've been asking God for a sign to take a step, that it could be through Cameron or myself's podcast or mine. So that's what I'm gonna start doing. Try to be authentic. I mean, the best person you can be is yourself. And so
Yeah.
hopefully that encourages somebody.
Well, I have to say, your podcast has been very powerful to tune in. I really listened to it, all your episodes throughout really November and December around the
Hmm.
holidays.
Yeah.
And it was very powerful that now I'm going to WealthCon because you shared your
Yeah.
story on that. And I've been really tuning in on Ryan Pineda's content and learning
Hmm.
more because that is like an additional venture that I'm kind of getting my feet wet in and
Yeah.
want to learn more about it. So thank you for
Love it,
that.
man. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing. Again, humbling.
Yeah.
It's not about me, but hopefully again for to point to him. And I'm sure you'll meet a ton of great people. I had my own little like Holy Spirit moment at WealthCon where
Yeah.
like it was like a fire being flamed. I was like, because you see the people I like 80% of the people he invited, I had no idea who they were, but they were there professing Jesus and saying, look, you can do this and still do this. Like, you can still be who you are and make
Yeah.
eight figures, nine figures.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. You'll meet some great people. It'll be very encouraging.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. So, as we wrap up, I do have some rapid fire questions to kind of
Okay,
have our listeners get to know you more in
let's
the
do it.
final minutes we have. So I think we touched on this a little bit, but if you can give a quick recap, how do you consume content to personally grow yourself?
Reading the Bible daily, worshiping and praying is my content, if you will, and
Hmm.
then podcasts and yeah, mainly podcasts, honestly, and reading books.
Yeah, what's your number one podcast that you would recommend?
What am I listening to lately? I like the Handlebar podcast by Upper Room. Well, it's not by Upper Room. It's just called the Handlebar podcast. is
Okay.
one of them that's really good. And then I really liked, I forget his name, but he just interviewed Patrick Bet David. Um, his name is Leo something. I don't know, but anyways, it's like the Millionaire Podcast, I think it's called.
Oh, okay.
Um, but if people know who I'm talking about, it was that really viral TikTok of Patrick Bet David breaking down when he asked him if you could start all over again, like what's the most important thing, and he pointed to God. Patrick did, which was beautiful.
Oh, yeah, I saw that on TikTok. Is it Lewis House?
Lewis House, there it goes.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't.
that one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's a Millionaire Podcast, right? Is that what it's called or
Uh,
no?
School of Greatness or something like that.
Or School of Greatness? Okay, cool. I thought
Something
it was
like
that
that.
one.
Yeah, yeah. But man, yeah, that's a good podcast to tune into.
Hmm.
Such an amazing. That's another way. Like you learn from other people's stories, all these
Hmm.
great people that you're bringing on.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. Dead or alive, who do you like to have lunch with?
I mean, Jesus for sure. I mean, he's
For
alive.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
if someone else, hmm, I would say Simon Bolivar. He was the liberator of most of South America against the Spaniards.
Mm, awesome. And what's the next thing that you would like to do on your bucket list?
Travel to Japan and stay there for at least, I mean, goal would be a month, but that's probably not
Yeah.
realistic.
Yep.
I just love Japanese culture. I've loved traveling my whole life. I've heard only great things of Tokyo, Osaka,
Hmm.
Shibuya, and I love seafood. Just everything about Japan. I just want to go so bad. So,
And what is the best words of advice or words of wisdom that you've received so far?
best words of advice in my entire life was hearing, God loves you no matter what. He loves you where you're at. He will love you forever, and he's proud and satisfied with you.
Mm,
Yeah, that's the best
awesome.
thing. It changed my life. Can't give any other words but that.
Cool. Cool. Well, as we come to a close, Juan, final words of encouragement to those listening out there.
Encouragement. Man, I'm a pretty simple man. In the sense of, you guys have probably heard me just talk about this man named Jesus. If you're searching out there, if you feel lost, if you don't understand purpose or anything in life, I would say seek him, read the Bible, seek people that know him. We're talking about mindset and surrounding yourself about these people who are big, great entrepreneurs. I would first encourage you to heal and grow from the inside out in your heart, and that would be talking to people, going to a church, and encountering Christ for yourself. It'll change your
Mm,
life. So you'll find your true purpose there. It won't be money, it won't be entrepreneurship, it won't be a career. It'll be much bigger than that. And I think society needs that nowadays, because we'll make it about ourselves. We'll be crumbling as a society.
yeah, amen to that. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Juan, it's been awesome getting to know you more and your
Appreciate
story.
you.
Yeah, thank you for your time and wanting to do this.
Absolutely. It's been my
Yeah,
pleasure. I'm honored to be on it. I
yeah,
hope the best for your career, man. Entrepreneurship, I know it ain't easy.
yeah.
And continue to do this. And thank you again for having me. I'm honored.
Thank you. Same to you as well.
All right.
Well, I thank you so much for tuning in to Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh. I really hope you really enjoyed this interview with Juan as much as I did, and I hope that you were able to have some awesome takeaways. Juan is new in business, new in entrepreneurship, and really hope that you had some awesome takeaways and to see really taking a deep dive into his story, and I hope that it helped you. So I really hope if you want to connect with Juan, you can go to his website and his social media at the podcast description. All the links are there to connect with him. And also, if this is your first time to listening to Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh, go ahead and subscribe on whichever platform you're listening on. Also, if you want to connect with me, you can go to my website, CameronSingh.com. And if you haven't gotten a copy of my first book yet, Navigation and Discovery, you can go ahead and get that on my website, CameronSingh.com. Thank you again for tuning in to the podcast today, and hopefully this episode added value to you wherever you're at in your journey of life. And feel free to take a listen to some of the previous episodes as well, as we've had some amazing guests on the podcast, And also, launching on Thursday is a brand new podcast. I know this podcast has had a lot of faith context and faith elements in it, but I want to really focus on that a little bit more. And so I'm launching a brand new podcast this Thursday called Divine Revelations Unleashed. So if you're interested in that and learning more about faith, and I have some awesome guests lined up, been planning this podcast for several months now, doing recordings, and it's going to be a combination of myself sharing my faith journey, but also bringing in some amazing guests, amazing pastors, amazing people of faith to really take a deep dive into faith and what it means to be a believer in Christ. So if you're interested in that, you can go search Divine Revelations Unleashed on any podcast platform and you'll find it. And you can also find the videos will be posted on YouTube as well. And you can go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go to CameronSingh.com and you'll find the links on there. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll catch you on next week's episode of Navigation and Discovery next Tuesday. Thank you and have a great week.